This one is, this one is being recorded. It just started right now. Um, so if you'd like to remain anonymous, please go ahead and turn your cameras off. Also, keep this in mind. If you purchase an ear membership, you'll have access to all the past Umbrella Talks on YouTube. Okay. Also, I'd like to mention that there is a closed caption feature available, or perhaps already happening on everyone's Zoom screen. You can choose to keep it on or turn it off using the menu you'll find in live transcript in your Zoom settings. So anyway, how are we doing for people? We're still coming in. Okay. Well, what we got? Okay, I will start. So good evening. My name is Jill Armstrong. I'm a longtime board member at Elephant Artist Relief Society, also known as EAR, and also part of EAR's programming committee. And before we get started, I would like to ask Carolyn Connors to please deliver the land acknowledgement.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to begin tonight in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth by honoring and acknowledging Mohkinstsis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Yahahe, Nakota, and the Tsuut'ina nations. Threw me off. EAR acknowledges that this territory is also cherished by the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We celebrate all nations, Indigenous and non, who honor this land. We're grateful to engage in an honest and eager process of reconciliation. We are all treaty people.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. That was great. Anyway, so on behalf of EAR and the EAR leadership team, I would like to officially welcome you all to tonight's event, Basic Income and the Future of Artists' Livelihoods. We are grateful to each of you for choosing to spend your evening with us. Thank you so much for being here. This evening's talk is one of an ongoing series of EAR events called Umbrella Talks. EAR's primary purpose is to empower artists in Calgary and area to survive and thrive as artists, and these Umbrella Talks are one element of what we offer. This year, EAR celebrates 18 years of service to the local arts community, and even though EAR has grown and evolved over that time, our mission has remained the same: to provide practical resources that help sustain the livelihood and practice of artists in Calgary area. To achieve this, EAR offers monthly professional and personal development talks such as this one, a monthly online artist meetup group through Facebook called Last Wednesdays with Studio E, a wide variety of community resource information, which you can find on our website and on the Studio E page on Facebook. And of course, our core program of emergency financial relief for artists who find themselves in a crisis situation. That information can be found on the website. And I will post the web address in the chat when I'm finished the intro. As a charitable organization, we rely substantially on support from you, the public, in the form of volunteerism, membership, and especially fundraising to do what we do. You can help us by raising awareness about EAR, and if you can, please consider donating online. Our heartfelt thanks go out to all of those who've already supported EAR in the past in whatever form. The Society is 18 years old, young this year, and actually going to be 19 years very soon. And we encourage our supporters to contribute to keep this train rolling. Every dollar donated is allocated to providing relief for artists in time of need. So just to be clear, if you donate, You will receive a tax receipt from Canada Helps, and your dollars will go to EAR's emergency fund. And if you buy a membership, your dollars will support EAR's admin and programs like this one. So just one more bit of housekeeping. Throughout the presentation, we ask that you keep your mics on mute, and also please turn off your cameras so there's minimal background interference. Please use the chat box to write your questions as they come up, and we will go back to those for the Q&A portion of the evening. This evening, we will be hearing from Wendy Benson from We're Together Ending Poverty, also known as WTEP, and Basic Income Calgary. And also Justin Waddell, who is the VP of Carfax National, a director of COVA DAV, and has also done some work with Basic Income Calgary. They will both introduce themselves in more detail. And now, without further ado, I will pass you along to Wendy Benson. Enjoy the evening, everybody.
Well, thank you, Jill. It's a pleasure to be back with EAR and talking about basic income again. I think it's been a few years since I've been here, but another colleague, Rosemary Brown from WTEP, or We're Together Ending Poverty, has also participated in these presentations. Just a little bit about WTEP. They're a diverse grassroots group of activists working to educate and empower people to take action on the root causes of poverty. They create mutually supportive relationships that encompass learning and sharing, and they want to transcend practices of oppression in relationships. And they welcome all who self-identify as women, trans, non-binary, or two-spirit. And Basic Income Calgary is also a grassroots organization within Calgary that includes a number of activists who are promoting and educating people, primarily in the Calgary area, about basic income, and also promoting petitions and contacting our provincial, federal, and municipal politicians. So with that, I will be sharing my screen and showing some PowerPoints. So let me get this together. Here we go. Share. Okay. Go. So this evening I'll be covering an introduction to basic income, who could benefit from basic income, why basic income is important, and the core elements or framework for which a good basic income policy should be developed, and the political scene within Canada. And so who could benefit from basic income? And it's basically so many people, but with it, on average, for every dollar Canadian white men earn, women would earn 89 cents, Black men earn 81 cents, women of color would earn 59, and Indigenous people here in Alberta is about 88 cents. And that gives a perspective or an idea of who would benefit from basic income, but certainly includes also a diverse group of people, including the disabled, racialized women and men, LGBTQ+, Indigenous Canadians, women, especially single mothers, artists, gig workers, and youth who are leaving care. In 2021, this is based on Stats Canada data. There are over 7,000 professional artists in the city, and the income in, sorry, income uh, in 2021, or median income, was about 28,400, and that's about half of what other Calgary workers earned. 7 out of 10 were self-employed, and about 6 out of 10 were women. Is also, just to refer you back to 2021 and what was going on. Well, the personal income was 28,400. The market basket measure was for Calgarians was about $52,000. So well under half of what a minimum income should be. The Alberta Works rate for a family of 4 at that time was about $24,500. So there's these large gaps between what people make from their income, what they might earn from Alberta Works or or Alberta income for severely handicapped programs. There's just this huge gap that exists, and so that's why in Calgary we typically have about 10% of our population is living in poverty. And to help meet the needs of people, we're proposing that there be a basic income, and this is a program that, when implemented, would ensure everyone has income sufficient to meet their basic needs, and that they could live with dignity regardless of their work status. The basic needs include housing, food, clothing, transportation, and communication, whether it be a cell phone or internet. It would be a regular, predictable income, universally and unconditionally available to all who need it. And why basic income is needed in Canada is that we need to reduce poverty and income inequality in Canada. When there are large discrepancies between people who have high incomes and the lowest income, there is growing restlessness and can be civil disobedience at a minimum. And just as an example, there are now what they call Gen Z protests that are quite dramatic. One was in Mexico City recently, and also in the Philippines. When people have enough money, they are healthier, and our communities become healthier. Right now, 1 in 4 Albertans are food insecure, in that they're doing things to adjust how much they're spending on food, and compromising on the foods that they'd like to buy. The other thing is that lower income people use more health services. There'll be less crime, and when there's less crime, there's less policing and court costs. And lastly, not lastly, there's a few more points. Basic income does encourage job security, entrepreneurship, artists, and risk-taking. So it gives people a chance, that a bit of a breathing room, knowing that their housing and food and their basic needs are covered, that they can take the time to take on jobs or look for jobs or become an entrepreneur or develop their artistic skills and passions. And lastly is that basic income would respect human rights and dignity, because so much of the social welfare system right now is one of punishment and retribution, where if you earn extra money, it's clawed back. So there's several myths about what people think basic income is and would do or wouldn't do. So I'll just cover over the top myths. Oops, pardon me. This is really an important slide. There is a basic income program for artists and in Ireland, and it started in 2022, and they picked 2,000 random artists, gave them about just over $2,000 a month for 3 years. And this program ended earlier in 2025, and they've not discovered, but have clearly identified the benefits of supporting artists with enough money for their basic needs. And they found that it strengthened professional autonomy. There was more time for creative efforts, and more work was produced. There was more shows, productions, audience engagement, and this is really important, is that they can show that there was increased tax generated from providing basic income to artists. It decreased their social welfare payments, and as you can well imagine, that it decreased the improved the psychological well-being of artists, because there's not always that persistent worry about how you're going to juggle bills, and which is going to be paid and which is going to be left behind when you're going to rely on charity or other forms of support. But there's a great milestone. In October, the government of Ireland announced that this would be permanently funded starting in 2026. But right now, we're short on details of terms of the number of artists, how much length of time they're supported, or the amount of money that the groups would get. Excuse me. So now on to the myths. One of the common ones is we can't afford basic income, but for every dollar that is spent, there can be savings, and it comes from saving on less health services, less demand for shelters, fewer jailed people, and rural development is expanded. There are more opportunities for people for high school completion, job retraining, getting involved in the arts and culture. And in agriculture, programs are becoming more invested in the rural areas and the agriculture part of it. So the arts and culture occurs two ways. It's that the artists themselves are developed, and also people with lower incomes, it's one of the parts of their lives they're not able to participate in, or wouldn't prioritize, is spending money to go to a concert or a show. So there's lots of benefits from having basic income, and why we can afford it. A very common myth is, well, if you give all these people all this money, they won't work. But we have had studies in Manitoba, Ontario, Denver, Seattle, Honduras, Mexico, Alaska, et cetera, and they all consistently show that a basic income does not result in fewer working people. When people choose not to work because they have basic income, it's usually for reasons that many in our Canadian society would think, hey, that's an okay thing. And that would include more time at home with young children, or supporting elder care, or in terms of working in the employed people per se, that they become entrepreneurs, or developing their artistic abilities. It's not a disincentive to work, and the people who leave the workforce per se is estimated to be around or even under 1% of all working adults. The next myth is that people will spend that basic income on alcohol and drugs and gambling and so on. But that's not true. And again, several basic income studies around the world have shown that less money is spent on alcohol and drugs because there's not as much stress that encourages or support allows people to deal with their stress with alcohol and drugs. The other thing is that when people do get basic income, the money is spent. The people need money, that money, and they do spend it. And that money is often spent well within within the community. So it does build up the community. Studies show that what people spend the money on includes education, including more on tuition, computer equipment. They spend, one of the first things they buy is better food or more food, childcare, and change their transportation. And they also change up their recreation opportunities and become more engaged in arts and culture within the community. Fourth myth is that anyone who wants to work can have a job. And that's simply not the true. And so for Alberta, in October 25, the overall unemployment rate is 7.8%. However, when we look at young men who are 15 to 24 and young women, their unemployment rates are so much higher for men, young boys, young men, particularly. It's about double the employment rates. And employers just don't hire this group of people as much as we'd like. Oops. The other thing that's happening with employment, and certainly over the last few months, we're hearing a lot more about this, is automation. And it's going to continue, automation is going to continue to eliminate skilled labor jobs and a lot of possibly white collar jobs as well. And basic income will give people that chance to retrain for other careers. Another part of anyone who wants to work can work leads to people with very strong education, good education, leading them to jobs that are low paying, such as construction and food service. And so the argument is that everybody can work, is that those jobs aren't suitable for everybody who is would be considered an employee. Now, basic income advocates, we have requested a basic income, but rather than organize a specific tax structure and taxable income and specific benefits, we recommend a general plan because the tax policies can vary so much. So we're recommending that the basic income plan the policy makers decide on include Canadian and resident adults. That'd be adequate in terms of market basket measure. It's based on the person's taxable income. It would be individual, paid regularly. Person's not required to go to work or go to a work training program or go to school. And the other thing is we're proposing as basic income increases, as their income increases, basic income would slowly decrease, and that the application process be as open as possible for people of varying skills and abilities. In terms of how it's going to be planned, we do need a lot of people to talk and be collaborating with each other. So it includes, we're recommending the federal, provincial, territorial governments and Indigenous people collaborate to be guaranteed, basic income be guaranteed as a right within federal legislation. And basic municipal governments are very important in this. For people who have low income in Calgary, they're eligible for certain levels or have to pay for, let me rephrase that, is that they're eligible for fair entry, and their amount of income determines how much they pay for bus passes and entry into rec programs and so on. We recognize that basic income isn't the panacea. It is not the end all and be all. We still need to maintain and encourage public funded universal supports, including universal health care, the dental program, drugs programs, better childcare and affordability around childcare in Alberta. And the programs that we do have, these are not to be replaced. And also that, lastly, that people with disabilities or have special or exceptional needs, that their income not be, that they be given consideration for additional income to help meet their needs. So what's happening? We'll turn over to the federal government, what's happening. Just going back to November 2021, the Senate and PE government at that time requested the government of Canada, federal government, support and pilot basic income in Canada. And so over the last 4 or 5 years, this has been moving forward very slowly, but it's moving forward. The last parliament from 2019 to 2025, there were 2 parallel basic income bills for a basic income framework, which meant that there was no budget for the program, partly because it was being introduced by opposition MPs and also the Senate. And neither of those groups can introduce bills that have costs associated with them. So when the session was prorogued, what had happened was the House of Commons had defeated the legislation at second reading, but the Senate bill was left at committee, where a smaller group of senators, or in the case of the House of Commons, the MPs, discuss it and make a recommendation to the House of Commons or to the Senate about if that bill should go forward. So we're into a new parliament session, and in November 25, Senator Pate introduced and Bill S-206, same kind of plan as before. It was passed just recently, and it's gone to the committee stage for hearings. So out of that, it's possible, one thing is more media coverage about basic income, about the discussion. And the second thing is that might come about, we're hopeful will come about, is that senators will pass this at the committee stage, send it back to the Senate for third reading. And just for your information, if it passes the Senate, then it goes to the House of Commons for discussion and legislation. Legislation passes. Some important history around what's happened with basic income is that in 2020, just before the pandemic, 50 senators supported basic income and came out publicly to support it. In 2019, the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's report had calls to action about including guaranteed annual livable income for Indigenous women, because one of the reasons some of the on-reserve violence is occurring is that these women have no money and cannot leave the relationship. So, who's supporting basic income federally? Officially, the Liberal Party of Canada. The Green Party supports it, and it's been mentioned at leaders' debates. NDP proposal was made at a policy convention in October 23 with no decision about it. And we know that about 40 elected MPs support basic income, and some have specifically are on record for wanting to know about how basic income can benefit artists. So that's encouraging from the artist perspective. What else is going on in the provinces? Well, I don't think this is a surprise for Albertans that the UCP doesn't have an interest in basic income, and the NDP don't have a policy about basic income. Quebec, however, has introduced basic income for handicapped adults. So what's equivalent to AISH payments here in Alberta are higher in the province of Quebec. And PEI has social assistance top up if the person or family's been on social assistance 5 of the last 6 years, and also for youth leaving care. So that's kids leaving the foster system. And as I mentioned earlier, their PEI has a all-party government request and talking with the federal government about basic income. Now for the municipalities, the last little bit, just a sec. More and more Canadian municipalities are supporting basic income. Basically what they do by supporting basic income is say, well, let's work with our federal and provincial governments and their MPs and MLAs to help start basic income. The BC Union of Municipalities has supported. There's a large group of municipalities in Atlantic Canada, and also to many municipalities within Ontario. And just because we've elected a new mayor and council in Calgary, we're assessing the progressive councillors to see if this is something that could be supported and endorsed and encouraged to talk to the MPs and MLAs in the Calgary area. And so lots of things that you can do to be involved with basic income. Some that are mentioned on the left are following basic income on social media. So Basic Income Calgary is on, specifically Basic Income YYC is on Facebook, Instagram, X, or Twitter. There's a current campaign right now to write to your MP to ask them to support basic income, and that's a specific address. When I'm finished chatting, I can put that into, finish talking, I'll put that in the chat. Often there's e-petitions usually when the legislation is at a critical point. So for example, I would anticipate as the senators who are on the National Finance Committee are getting ready to make a decision, there would be a request to send e-petitions to the senators on that committee to encourage them to support basic income and send it to third reading in the Senate. Other ways that you can get involved is to volunteer with Basic Income Calgary. We're looking for people willing to share their stories about basic income, what it's like to live on an artist's income, people to do public speaking or outreach, to do displays and so on. And you can contact me at the address below, Calgary at basicincomealberta.ca. And so with that, I would just say it's time for questions, but I understand we're going to hold off on the questions until after the break. And so now if Jill would come back.
Sure. Yep, I will take
Introduce Justin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rosemary. Sorry, Wendy, for another very informative talk. And yeah, I would like to pass you over to Justin Waddell. I think he's got some pretty interesting stuff to bring up, stuff that I didn't even know was happening. So enjoy. Thank you, Justin.
Hi, everybody. Hi, my name is Justin Seiji Waddell. I'm an associate professor at the Alberta University of the Arts, formerly ACAD. I've been there for about 20 years now, and I'm really happy to be here. I was asked to participate a little late with a little bit of notice. So I unfortunately don't really have a presentation prepared, but I will be able to provide a number of links in the chat that hopefully you'll be able to click on and follow through. I also want to note that although I am the vice president of CARFAC National, I'm not here representing CARFAC National. I will provide some links to resources that CARFAC provides on their website. So, of course, you can always contact CARFAC yourself. I just want to note that, of course, we do have a designated representative, either as the president or as the executive director. I'm also a board member at Copyright Visual Arts, which is also known as COVA DAV. DAV is Droit Auteur Arts Visual, the French version. I'm on a number of other boards. So Wendy had mentioned that I do some work with Basic Income. I'm also currently on the board of Peripheral Review, which is a journal out of Vancouver. C Visual Arts Foundation, which publishes C Magazine, Black Flash Magazine. I'm on a lot of boards of magazines, which is out of the Prairies. The New Media Caucus, which is an international new media group for advocacy work, is promotion of new media work. And the Immigrants Council for Arts Innovation, which is based here in Alberta, started in Calgary, is now trying to move across the province. I really would encourage everyone here to, if you don't know Immigrants Council for Arts Innovation, or ICAI, to definitely look them up. They are doing some amazing work. I'm very proud to be able to be working with them. I'm also on the Arts, Culture, and Education Committee of the National Association of Japanese Canadians. In the past, I've been on a number of different artist-run center boards, festivals, galleries, magazines, places like Prefix Magazine, Trinity Square Video, Lola Magazine. I've worked at the Art Gallery of Calgary, or sorry, the Art Gallery of Ontario, not Calgary, the Art Gallery of Ontario. The New Gallery, I've worked at Media, Mountain Standard Time. I've been a part of EAR on the board. I've also been the director of Artists Artist Outlet in Toronto, as well as the director of Stride Art Gallery, which is based here in Mohkinstsis, Calgary. So, I mean, that's just a weird kind of blurby bio for myself. The things that I want to talk about here today that I thought would be of interest to this conversation, of course, everything that was presented by Wendy on basic income, I think I really want to put a lot of emphasis on basic income. I think about the basic income model in Ireland as being one that was a big success. Even as an artist and as a arts professor, I would probably put more emphasis on a universal basic income or a basic income for everyone, as opposed to one specifically for artists. I don't often apply for grants or participate in the grant system, partially because I have relatively stable employment. But I definitely believe in the benefits of basic income. Short of that, I think that the work that we're doing at Carfax National and in our locals is pretty amazing. I'm part of the negotiations team right now with Carfax and the National Gallery of Canada. And so people don't seem to be totally aware, unless you have an exhibition at the National Gallery of Canada, that we do have an agreement, a collective agreement with the National Gallery of Canada. And it's negotiated. This is the second time that we are in negotiations to come up with a new collective agreement. And unfortunately, I can't talk about it right now because we're still in the midst of it. But definitely part of that work is advocating for artists, and what gets done in that collective agreement will feed into a lot of the work that we do in our advocacy work. So most people are aware of the Carfax rates, the rate sheets. So for professional services as well as for artist fees. So that work is always ongoing. We're constantly developing the rates in conversations with other organizations, often the National Museums Associations. A lot of that has to do with, it's one thing for us just to say that, oh, artists should get paid more money. It's another thing to be able to work with partners like museums to ensure that they can include this in their budgets for increases. So that work is always ongoing and being developed. One of the things that had just happened, and I included a link in the chat, if you can't see it, is this just happened 2 days ago, when the budget was approved. We did have the artist resale right in the federal budget. This has been work that's been going on for well over a decade to try to ensure the artist resale right, which would be an amendment in the Copyright Act in Canada. For those who aren't aware of what artist resale right is, it essentially means that the artist will be paid 5% of every sale of their work in the secondary market. And I think it's important to note how much money is made in the secondary market, and the types of profits that are being made. So prior to this, any works that were sold once, obviously the artist would get a portion of that first sale. But then often those works will exist in the secondary market, be sold and resold, increase in value, et cetera, et cetera. The argument that we have here is around ensuring that these works are royalties. So 5% of the sale, and understanding some of the background around this. As an example, there's an Inuit artist. Some people are relatively familiar with this print called Enchanted Owl by Kenajak Ashiviak, that was originally sold in 1960 for $24. It was later resold for $158,000. And in that sale for $158,000, the artist received nothing. And that's not accounting for the sales that occurred every single time as it got to that point of $158,000. So some of the information that we were using when we were advocating for artist resale right, this unfortunately dates back to the 2016 census, where there were 21,000 visual artists that were identified in Canada or self-identifying. half of those visual artists earned only $20,000 a year, which is less than half the average of the Canadian worker. And 66% of visual artists were self-employed or are self-employed. Most senior artists, and again, this is something that comes up in basic income, it comes up with EAR. When I was on the board of EAR, this was something that we were really working towards, which is that most senior artists don't have access to the Canada Pension Plan and cannot afford to retire. And the artist resale right is an attempt to help address the rising cost of living. It should also note that the artist resale right aligns with many other international trade partners. The first country to have the resale rights for artists was France in 1920. Now there's over 90 countries, including Australia, the UK, all EU members. New Zealand has recently passed, well, I guess it's been a couple of years now, their artist resale right legislation in a trade agreement with the UK. Uh, According to CISAC, which I actually don't know what that acronym means. I was paused for a second because I'm not sure what CISAC means. I'll double check that. 50 million euros were collected in 2022, which is a 7.2 increase from 2021. So again, that's 50 million euros that were collected on behalf of artists and given directly to those artists in 2022. We also note within CARFAC of the real need to address reconciliation with Indigenous artists. And we recognize that the median annual income of Indigenous visual artists is much lower at $13,500. The Indigenous artists in Canada are most commonly exploited in the secondary market. Prints are often bought, or original works are often bought at below market value and then resold for significant profit. In 2015, the Inuit visual arts and craft economy across Canada contributed over $64 million to the Canadian GDP. And in Australia, as an example, over 65% of royalties are paid to Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander artists. So all of this is to say that it's recently been approved. That happened 2 days ago, so I had a very brief meeting about it yesterday. It's great news. We are hoping that it will be part of it will be pushed through in the next month. And then the hard work of figuring out how it's going to operate, which will start in the new year, and how we can begin to implement it. I'm also a member of, wait, let me just 1 second here. I'm just going to drop in a little information from the CARFAC website here on the artist resale right. I'll put it into the chat. And I think I have a couple of news articles, perhaps. This one's a slightly older press release coming from CARFAC. We got close to it last year, but as you know, there was a sudden election. So it got put off until this year. I do have this one article from Galleries West, slightly dated, but relevant nevertheless. This came out in 2022 by Patty Lamb, who's an Albertan, but was also the former president of CARFAC at that time. It's a pretty thorough article. It's in Galleries West. And they also give several examples of artworks that were sold and then resold on the secondary market for a significant increase. I want to point out, as I mentioned, I'm also a board member of COVADAV. So this is the Copyright Visual Artists. And I'll just provide a quick link to this as well. So COVADAV, I'm actually on COVADAV as a representative of CARFAC. And it's a partnership with CARFAC and RAV, which is the Quebec version of CARFAC. So this is a statement from Kovadav regarding the artist resale right. We've been rebuilding Kovadav over the last couple of years to hopefully be able to help facilitate the artist resale right. That we would act uh, um, be able to negotiate and handle some of the transactions between the auction houses and the sales and individual artists. Kovadav is a used to be called was previously called Copyright Visual Arts. We collect royalties from users, so users being institutions, businesses, for reproduction rights of work. So if an image were to be used in a magazine or in a publication, we would collect the royalties on behalf of our members. Anyone can become, well, not anyone. We now have a process for becoming a member of Copyright Visual Arts. There is a small fee, but that small fee is actually new. We needed that because previously there were a number of members that uh, weren't actually providing artworks. So there were kind of, we couldn't tell if there were bots or whatnot. So there is a relatively small membership fee, but then we would be able to work on your behalf to manage the royalties and professional fees, as well as make sure that your income tax reporting is all together. And so hopefully Copyright Visual Arts will be able to take on some of this work with the artist resale right. It's not confirmed by any means. All of that still has to be worked out, but we do see some potential for that. I do want to say I made the mistake when the artist resale right news was coming out. I think I looked on like the Calgary Herald's comment page. I just started going into the comments, which was always a mistake. And the biggest comment that it seemed kept coming up was and sort of an analogy around, well, if I buy a house or if I build a house, sell it, I don't expect money off of the sale of that house forever, every time it gets resold. That's not what this is. This isn't that kind of property. Artworks, artists maintain the copyright to artworks. We also maintain the resale right royalties on artworks. So simply because you make a painting and it sells, you do not lose all rights to that painting. You maintain the copyright to that painting. And so if that painting were to be sold, resold, and resold, and resold, you still maintain the copyright to that painting. The owner doesn't have the copyright and can't make reproductions of it on their own, obviously. You've seen this happen with a number of images, works that maybe there wasn't an insistence on maintaining those royalties. Again, thinking about Indigenous artists, it happened quite a bit and continues to happen quite a bit, where those works are often removed of the artist's name and reproduced on any number of things, any number of times. One, yes. period. So this is a royalty. It's not as if an artist is just trying to grab 5% of every single sales. So yes, it's also not every single sale. The right would only apply to secondary sales of original works of art that are protected by copyright. So it would neither apply to first sale, so obviously that's some sort of an agreement that you might have with your dealer, or if you sell it yourself, or sales between private individuals. So if a private individual sells it to another private individual, that's something else. It wouldn't apply to sales of works outside of copyright. So if you don't own the copyright to an artwork, which does happen on occasion for like illustrators, etc., occasionally they sell the copyright. It also wouldn't apply to works that sell less than the qualifying threshold of $1,000. So any work that's under $1,000, it doesn't apply. Um, uh, it would not apply when a work is sold in a country without resales rights. So there are potential loopholes, and we've seen this happen throughout the EU, where they will simply take an artwork out of country, sell it out of country, and then import it back in. Um, so these sorts of things internationally are something that we're trying to work towards creating additional rules around that. Um, it also will apply because copyright applies after death, that the resale right will continue as a benefit to your heirs if you have any. It'll also help them with the management of your estate, and you would be able to will your artist resale right like your other copyrights, if you were to include it in your will to other people. So if you think about well-known artists, or any artist for that matter, that they would be able to, even if you, because often you don't know what to expect in the future. So you might be struggling at one point in your life, and then maybe better known or able to create a lot of revenue off of your work later in life or early in life, who knows. But hopefully you would be able to continue to benefit, or your heirs will be able to continue to benefit from that. Um, uh, so hopefully that helps explain what artist resale right looks like. Again, you might have seen some of it in the news in the last 2 weeks, if you weren't aware of it. But it has been something that we've been working on for a very long time. I think the other thing that I just want to touch on, just because it does deal with copyright, and as I think about income, and maybe it's just because I spent my morning in meetings about this, thinking about AI. So I am also on several committees around AI. There is a new minister of AI, Evan Solomon, you might know from the CBC, as well as art scandals of art sales. To Carney as one of the people that he did sell artworks to. But he is the new minister of AI. And there were some consultations that were happening regarding AI and artists' rights through Canadian Heritage. This article just came out, I think 2 days ago, on the subject of AI. It doesn't deal specifically with visual artists, but it does deal with, some trends that are occurring. This one mentions specifically AI generated music, which there have been a few entirely AI generated songs and albums by fictitious bands that are now getting airplay and appearing on charts, Billboard charts, for instance. And so certain groups like the Songwriters Association of Canada are very concerned about this, as well as musicians, just independent musicians, professional musicians. The House of Commons Heritage Committee has been working on a report which will follow up on the hearings for the study of AI that they've been doing, thinking about AI generated content, as well as the sort of scraping of music, of materials that it's finding through streaming platforms, um, as well as just online to create these new songs, quote unquote, new songs. This stuff is relatively new. It's something that we've been trying to deal with and think about quite a bit. And we've been making recommendations to the government for a number of years. There are obviously there's issues that have come up through labor. I think specifically of the Screen Actors Guild strike, as well as the actress strike, which I mean, uh, somewhat awkwardly was led by my father, who was the executive director of ACTRA for a number of years. But the only ACTRA strike or actors strike in Canada, one of the key issues at that point was AI, or the potential for AI and digital media. And then I think somewhat famously, when the Screen Actors Guild went on strike a couple of years ago, the big issue for them was artists' likeness and artists' voices being used as for AI. And so you see that this is becoming more of a labor issue, and as well as a copyright issue for artists. There are a few interesting things that are happening in academia, and I just mentioned this because I am an academic, but here is a recent article about AI and the creative industries that might be of interest for people. Again, working with Parliament or advocating for the rights of Canadian songwriters and Canadian artists, and AI intelligence companies. There's at least one think tank that's been developed at the Ontario College of Art and Design University, headed up by Kelly Wilhelm. And so they've been doing quite a bit of work to, I guess, articulate positions on behalf of artists, but also working with industry. So they're a little bit uh, uh, nonpartisan about it. They're not necessarily, one of the things that they often talk about is that how they don't think it's just a binary issue. They're not against AI necessarily. So they're working with the Cultural Policy Hub at OCAD University to think about standards for the industry, as well as issues that come up in the labor market. And one thing that I did want to end on here is just to think a little bit about retirement plans. And so RAV, again, which is the Quebec version of, or the Quebec equivalent of CARFAC, has recently created, had an agreement, the first agreement actually, with four major museums in Quebec. Um, I'll just put this in the chat here. So there's the French version because the RAV website is almost exclusively in French. But this one article that's in English from City News talks about this first collective agreement that's with multiple museums. And so they were able to have four collective agreements. But one of the interesting points of this, as well as the increases in terms of artist fees, as well as professional services, is the establishment of a retirement plan. And so the retirement plan that they developed, let me just make sure I have it pulled up here, is that the museums will contribute towards a pension, so the Quebec pension plan. 8.5% contribution, so 8.5% of whatever artist fee they receive will go towards or will be paid into the Quebec pension plan. 9% in 2026 and 9.5% in 2027, at which point a new collective agreement will be negotiated. So that's something I think is quite wonderful for artists in Quebec. It's something that we're trying to develop and negotiate across the country. Would be if you, and again, it's unfortunate because it's for artists who have these exhibitions inside of these institutions. But as an artist who has an exhibition inside this institution, we would hope that these institutions, like any other employer with benefits, within those benefits would be a contribution towards a retirement plan or colloquially known as a pension, although it isn't officially a pension. It's a retirement plan as a benefit. So hopefully that will be able to happen. Again, I say all of this in the context of ear. As an artist, I would advocate on basic income, maybe primarily as a first line of support for our communities, but the work within the sort of profession of artists is hopefully going to get a little bit better with this as we develop these policies. So that's about it. Maybe we'll go into questions or something. Hi, Jill.
Hi. Just turning my camera on again. Thank you so much, Justin. That was great. Okay, you guys, before we go into the break and get ready for Q&A, I just want to point out here that I see very few questions in the chat. And I need you guys to understand that these two speakers here are veritable fountains of information if you choose to plumb their depths, so to speak. Wendy has been speaking on WTEP and basic income every year or other year for the past several years with various different partners, and her information is always really top notch and up to the minute. And Justin, I have to say, he did mention that he was invited late. He was invited very late through no fault of his own, due to some crossing of wires and my own serious over busyness right now. Justin was actually not invited until last night. So he put together quite a talk here just with very little notice. So please, you guys, ask these people questions. The resources they have provided are awesome, but please ask questions while you're here in the room, because questions you ask might help others as well. Okay, so we're going to take a break right now. We're going to break for maybe about 8 minutes, and we'll put the feedback form into the chat again. Oh, wait, Carolyn just did it. Okay. Basic income and the future of artist livelihoods feedback form. Please fill out that feedback form. We put those into the chat with every one of the events we do, and the responses that you provide on those forms, they help us to program future umbrella talks and other things that we do at year. So please take a few minutes to do that. Anyway, so it's 2010. We'll come back at maybe 2018. Okay. Okay, everybody. It's 2018. I'm back. Are you back?
I am.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Um, we don't have a lot of questions here, but let's see what we can do. First of all, the first one asked quite early in the evening. Somebody asked, and this would be for you, Wendy. Can you provide the supporting information for myth 2 and 3? She says, I'm interested in the myth busting studies and statistics.
Okay. Wonderful question. And yes, I have searched for this information too, because actually I come from a science background, and evidence-based work has been really important. So I need a good solid reference for my statements. So myth 2 was people will work, or the actual fact is people will work. One reference that I can think of that includes a very specific number is the last uh, publication from the Parliamentary Budget Officer of Canada, who was costing how much basic income would cost when you consider all the factors of what poverty does cost Canadians. And his estimate was that 1% of people on a basic income program would drop out of the workforce and not be contributing productively through our artistic work, volunteering, or elder or child care. So that's one. And there was another question on myth about myth 3. Which I have to just double check. That's about people not spending their money on alcohol and drugs. And in Canada, again, another great Canadian study or example is when two stages of life. Right now, we do have two forms of basic income in Canada. One is the Canada Child Benefit, and the other is turning 65, and old age supplement and the guaranteed income supplements kick in for people who with low incomes. And when the Canada Child Benefit was introduced in 2016, there was the social scientists went to work, and they tracked the spending patterns of families before and after the Canada Child Benefit. And so there is one study documenting that alcohol and drugs did go down with receiving the Canada Child Benefit. And for anybody who does receive it, you know it's a help, but it's not the complete answer, and it's not, in some cases, feels like it doesn't feel like so much money. We also know the same thing happens with seniors. When people go from 64 to 65, get onto OAS and GIS, their alcohol and drug patterns change, and their money goes towards more food, maybe different housing for themselves, and some basic things. Well, I shouldn't say basic things, but some critical things, items for the house, whether it be a better TV, a computer, that kind of electronics, that kind of stuff. So we do know about that. And if you're interested in the specific references, please email me, and I'll get the specific links or articles to you. They're technical reports, so they can be, if you love numbers, you'll love these reports. If you don't love numbers, they're a bit to wade through.
Okay, thank you so much, Wendy. Hmm. see. I think that was just a statement, not a question. 56. Okay. Where is it? So somebody said that I said, I've interviewed Wendy and I do have questions revealed through the form of statements. I think we need some clarification on that. I don't know exactly what that means. That's kind of vague. Can that person speak to that?
It's
Yes,
Gavin.
absolutely. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Gavin.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've interviewed Wendy in the past and several others, as well as the I guess, Canadian representative. Um, and it was a pleasure. Just to start off really quickly, I think that really what we're talking about here is a working class issue, even more than a gender-based one, although the gender-based issues do weigh into it. Every man, woman, or anything else has to have a job. And this is our commonality. And so I kind of like to, at least put some stress on that. Anyway, regardless of that, um, we've dealt a lot with the very busy nature of some individuals. I think of this Justin individual who I just got tired listening to how many things he's doing all at once, which is quite commendable. However, I also think that there is an infrastructure issue here with relating to artists themselves, and seeing that we're dealing with artists here. Um, I have done a replete study and proposal for City Hall regarding the plight of the artist. I read in someone's remarks here that a general BI might be uh, more important than for the artists themselves, because it's hard to quantify what it makes an artist and what doesn't, seeing as though the human species is creative as a whole. And so, although I may shoot myself in the foot here, I do think that this has to start with the least of these, if you'll understand the expression, and that is the homeless and people who suffer even more than perhaps the artist does. However, having said that, and getting back to infrastructure, I think the infrastructure, if you take a look at something like Arts Commons, that is garnering $270 million of taxpayer money off of the citizens of Calgary, it seems to me, to a total amount of at least $600 million, if not more. It seems to me that this is kind of a cart before the horse issue. If you spent $270 million, let's just say, at $1 million apiece in all the 14 districts in Calgary, you would ostensibly come up with 252 artistic establishments in each of those 14 districts. Now, to me, that would seem to go a long way to solving the problem of artist, what's the word, precarity. Um, I mean, with the work that I've done, you would put around 4 music establishments in each district. And if you take a look at right now, I'm a musician, so I can't really speak to other disciplines, although I've done the work on them. But if you look at a place like Mikey's here in Calgary, um, everything I guess he did to try and save his place, and now it has fully and completely gone under. Um, we, there's a statement by Hannah Arendt that says that there's a difference between entertainment and culture. And culture can only be created by the masses. It can only be created by each individual giving their input. And so, what I see right now in terms of places like Arts Commons, NMC, and these monolithic entities is that they will never be able to satisfy the needs of every individual. However, if you put, like I said, 252 establishments, artistic establishments all around Calgary, to the tune of $270 million, which is already coming out of the Calgary taxpayer purse, you could go a long way in solving the precarity of the artist. For clubs in each district, would almost assure that a musician would have a place to play. Now, there are many elements to this which I can't go into for the sake of time. And those questions might be, well, how do you do that? Well, I would say, number one, we've already spent $270 million that is ostensibly going to one place and a few individuals. And to me, this seems anathema to actually solving the problem. So those are the statements, and I'd just like to get anyone's feelings about what I've said.
Okay, can I just paraphrase what I think you said, Gavin?
Mm-hmm.
That rather than putting all our City of Calgary tax dollars, more money into one Arts Common or Workland Center area, we need to divide it up. That money, it should go out to each ward and create various clusters throughout the city for different types of artists.
Correct.
Okay. As the non-artist in this particular group, I would say, sometimes personally, I enjoy the small arts groups and going to arts functions happen in community centers. And other times, I see some magnificent things in Arts Common or the Workland Center. So, I enjoy both as a consumer. So to take all of that money and just say it's only in our districts or in various communities, I don't think is the best way. It's not it shouldn't be black or white or such a dichotomy. It shouldn't be either or.
If I may, Wendy, this is just to say that it's not that Arts Commons doesn't exist. It already does, and it's not going anywhere with $270 million or without it. You'll always have Arts Commons. You'll always have, ACAD or whatever's beside it. I can't think the name of it. What we're talking about here, this whole discussion, is about people. It's not about, the ostentation of grand exhibition. Like I said, there's a difference, and Hannah Arendt spelled this out in one of her great books, the difference between entertainment and culture. And I think we're being entertained to death, and we don't have a lot of culture. And culture can only be realized by the masses, by me creating. I mean, I've played with Joan Rivers, I've traveled the world, and I have never played Arts Commons, and I have never played NMC. Neither will I. And NMC has a 2 out of 5 star rating, a 40% rating by the largest Canadian watchdog organization, CanadaIntelligence.ca, a 40% rating, saying that they can't even determine any benefit NMC is to the general good. And so this is where our money is going, and this is what ostentation costs us. And seeing that we're having a distinct conversation about people and the lives of people, it seems to me that maybe we could have less ostentation and more real pragmatic solutions. We will always have those places you can dress up in a fur coat and wear a nice parfum and go see an amazing act. But there are amazing, amazing musicians, and I've had a podcast for 6 years, you know this, amazing musicians in this city that have played with Sinatra. I was a Joan Rivers music director. We all exist in this city. And frankly, we're dying. We are dying. And that's what this conversation is about. Not ostentation, not about a great, great dress and a fur coat. It's about doing something for the people. And Arts Commons is there. All of these things exist. And we're building up to $1 trillion new arena um, while people, uh, artists die around us every day. This, I think, is true passion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm not sure if others, Jill or Justin, if they have opinions on this. I've just made my comments as a art consumer, not on the artist end of life.
Yeah.
Understood. That's fine.
I-
I I
sorry.
understand. I guess I will say a couple things. First of all, I think everybody here understands that when we're talking about basic income, we're not fundamentally talking about basic income just for artists. When we're talking about basic income, we mean everybody. This happens to be a group that focuses on the health and well-being of artists in particular. Okay. And Ireland has miraculously come up with this basic income specifically for artists. So that sort of raises the idea of income for artists up in high relief. But yes, we understand the idea of basic income being for anybody who needs it. I totally agree with you there. Um, that is what I wanted to throw in, and I just wondered if anybody else has anything else to add.
I can maybe add something as well.
Sure.
Thank you for your comments, Gavin. I think I don't disagree with you, although it does often get me in a bit of hot water, I think. I will say that the issues that you raise, and maybe even just to talk specifically about the basic income for artists in Ireland is, one can imagine the problems that they are facing. There are, like, first of all, how to qualify as an artist. It was only a study at the beginning. And so now that they have to implement it, they need to think through this. And so there will obviously be some individuals who will not be able to receive basic income for one reason or another, and because they haven't fully defined what that looks like yet. So, what will qualify you as an artist? What happens if you take a break? What happens if, for any number of reasons? So, if you have an injury, if any number of things, right? So, there's a lot of things at play there that even as when I found out about it or was reading the news, I started thinking of all these different scenarios, and then found articles, and they're all identifying those same issues. So almost any issue you can imagine, that's what they're going to have to try to resolve. I don't think they're going to do it in the first try. Hopefully, they'll get close to it. I do think that something like a universal basic income would just be better. But I think that they're looking at it as an industry specific thing, as a support for artists in Ireland. And maybe I can speak a little bit to that. One, because I mean, I had mentioned my father's role with ACTRA, and he also worked at Screen Actors Guild. And so my entire life, he was there before I was born, and he only retired a couple of years ago. My teeth are straight because I got braces on behalf of artists in Canada. Um, but I have a lot of respect for artists in Canada, and I have a lot of respect for the industry. So when I think about CARFAC, for instance, one of the great things that I think is a benefit that CARFAC has is that there is the fee schedule, so it applies to any exhibition at any level of your career. So whether you're exhibiting at the National Gallery or you're representing Canada at the Venice Biennale, one of the largest platforms, or you're showing at a small regional gallery for the first time, we're trying to advocate on your behalf and ensure that you get paid. That still requires that you're somehow hustling as an artist, though. And so you're still participating in that industry. I do agree with you, Gavin, about the sort of the different tiers of funding, the way that funding is distributed. think about the $40 million that was promised on behalf of the UCP to Contemporary Calgary for their new building. $40 million is a lot of money. I can think of a lot of things that you can be built for $40 million, including warming stations, houses, any number of other things that might not necessarily be an art gallery. And I say this as a professor of the arts. So there's that kind of work that has to be done in terms of maybe working within our community to maybe direct some energy towards other initiatives, maybe to support other things. When I look at some of the funding through CADA, Calgary Arts Development, as much as I truly appreciate the funding that goes to smaller initiatives, I'm thinking of places like Alcove Arts. I think it's a wonderful space. I think those people have been doing a lot of good work. I also see that they're probably going to burn out. They received a small amount of funding. They're doing a ton of work for a ton of different people. Um, and then I look at the millions of dollars, or I shouldn't say millions, let's say hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars that go towards some of those capstone institutions that aren't, many of which aren't even exhibiting art right now. And I wonder how such a large percentage of the budget will go towards those institutions. And yet you'll look at these smaller spaces that are all over their website. So clearly they see the cultural benefit of the work that these smaller institutions are doing, but it's not, you don't see the equivalence in terms of their funding. I do also just kind of want to point out really quickly is the Article 27 in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that does say that that art is a human right, that everyone has the right to participate freely in the cultural life of the community and to enjoy the arts. It establishes that the right to protection of the moral and material interests of creators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, it does see that art and the cultural life of a community is a human right. And I think that, as we have these conversations around things like housing, et cetera, we do need to include the arts, but that doesn't mean the commercial or the industrial side of the arts necessarily. So, as much as I do advocate or do advocacy work for professional artists, I also see the problems of what happens when, say, there's a personal injury or illness or a creative block or any number of, caring for dependents, et cetera, that might hinder your ability to participate fully in the industry. Where do you?
Just let me say this because I don't want to compromise any more time. I appreciate you've gone into depth and have everyone else. I just see this as I don't know. It seems to me pretty clear that we're coming to an event horizon right now, not just in the arts, but on a global scale, whether it's political or social or anything else. And I really think that it's we're going to have to come up with a better ethos and a better way of doing things, and really starting to take a look at the human life that we so gravely uh, say that we care about. $270 million does not need to go to Arts Commons. It needs to go to the people creating art. That's all I have to say, and I appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna move on if everybody's okay with that. We have a few more questions, but they're quite long and involved. So the next one here is actually a very good um platform for discussion here. Okay. The basic income for artists in Canada idea is up in the air for quite a few years now. I'm just hopeful for it to be passed as a bill. Some of us self-employed artists don't make regular revenues, so there is no CPP to look forward to, etc., which we've referred to tonight. And the retirement plan is a good idea that we need to have while we still are able. My question is, what do we need to do? How can we help? What can we do to get this basic income for artists going? Or basically, it says we can't move to Ireland, but basically the whole idea of basic income for everybody. Like, what can we possibly do? And even without, even just within the life of being an artist, what can we do as well? So, does anybody have any comments on that?
I can comment on a few parts of this. First of all, back to Ireland. It wasn't every artist in Ireland that got basic income. It was random. 2,000 artists were randomly selected, and when I looked at the criteria, to me as a non-artist, it looked fairly clear, and there were various definitions of who was an artist, and when the work slid over into more education than art and so on. But I bet some of you have comments. So 2,000 randomly selected artists is not so many, but when you consider that there were 7,000 people who identified as artists in Calgary in 2001. So what can we do? At a minimum, I would really encourage you to follow some basic income social media, and I've given the information for Calgary Basic Income. Two other groups you can follow to find out what's going on in Canada is Basic Income Canada, and another group called UBI Works. Those two groups have a good number of e-petitions, so that you can sign up and send messages to senators and to MPs. And this needs to keep happening as we, in some ways, take baby steps forward to having basic income in Canada. To get this going, specifically for artists, maybe I can refer that to Justin, or also just mention that there's someone in Ontario called Craig Burgold, who is very, very active in the basic income community. So maybe he's got the latest and greatest of what Craig's up to. Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't have any specific information on basic income for artists. Most of my interest is just in basic income.
For everybody?
Yeah, for everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
Makes sense. I think that's actually ultimately more doable here too. So, okay. Wendy, could you possibly write the name of that fellow you mentioned? Could you write that in the chat?
Sure.
Do you know how to spell it? Because that's a name, could be spelled a number of different ways, I think. Anyway, the next question. This person says, regarding an artist specific basic income, such as what they had in Ireland, I would be concerned about how one would have to prove that they are a professional artist. For example, I've been a professional musician and producer for many years, but my income from that has always been much less than my quote unquote real job. As far as taxes go, even though I claim my total income, I'm in a completely different occupation, not a musician, even though that is what I actually consider to be my true calling / identity. Every musician I know has an unrelated day job because music simply doesn't pay the bills. I would love to focus on my artistic work full time, though, really hoping for a general UBI. You know, I have to say, I'll just throw this in. I think your story basically applies to most of the artists I know in almost any discipline. It's very rare for any artist in any discipline to be able to make their living purely from their calling, from their art. So just as a basic statement. Does anybody else have any comments on that?
I think going back to, it should be a universal basic income for everyone. And as I'm learning more this evening, defining an artist is challenging.
Yes.
It's challenging. When the proportion of income from other sources and the art that really is a passion is doesn't reflect the art passion.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Wendy. Next question. Yeah, we're running out of time here now. I believe my question is related to basic income in some way. I was a full-time artist outside of Canada, which is great to hear that somebody was able to do that. And since arriving in Canada in 2022, I've had to change professions and work in construction. Not surprising, actually. Now, as a resident living in Calgary, I want to start my career as a professional artist, but this work environment, quote unquote, is new to me. So I'm interested in knowing if there's a program to guide artists in entering the job market. That is, creating their own structure with procedures similar to those of a company or platform. I don't think so, short of going back to college, because a lot of them are very career oriented now in terms of steering, sort of grooming artists for that. But does anybody else have any comments on that?
I can maybe answer. I mean, just depending on where they're from, they could get in touch with the ICAI or the Immigrants Council for Arts Innovation. And I guess I could actually backtrack on that. It's not really dependent on where you're from. I guess it's I mean, you just have to not be from Canada, and we don't really have too many artists, I don't think, from the United States, but definitely artists from many other places, including the EU. So if you're a new immigrant, definitely get in touch with the ICAI, and they do have mentorship programs as well as meet and greets, industry nights, things like that. So hopefully they'll be able to get you connected. The mentorship program is actually quite good. And what they'll do is they'll pair like an immigrant artist up with a professional in the field. So they're have a variety of different disciplines and yeah, backgrounds, and they will help you, yeah, get established. That's the main goal of the ICAI.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Good to know. I wasn't thinking in that way at all, so that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, one more question here. The world of work is changing rapidly for everyone from diverse occupations and industries. I work in the career and employment industry, and the reality is you can be precariously employed if you are a freelance marketer, a contracted equipment operator, or a part-time retail worker. Traditional full-time roles have decreased across industries, and on-demand labor has grown. So you're right. The conversation of basic income doesn't just apply to artists. However, people are getting creative around having multiple income streams and learning how to diversify their skills. Very true. Any comments there?
I guess I just
No?
agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
it's
that's
something. I mean, I teach. Again, teaching at the university, I teach the senior level kind of graduate seminars courses, and I do get in a little bit of trouble with my colleagues in administration. Not so much with students; they seem to appreciate it as sort of real talk around what it means to survive as an artist. I kind of wish that our recruitment team had a was maybe a little bit more obvious about this when they were trying to talk to uh, future students, parents predominantly about the career choices. I mean, maybe the parents talking to the parents that way, it's fine actually, but I think maybe the artists need to have a bit of reality check as they enter into the field that they hopefully they enjoy the arts quite a bit because right now employment they're not going to make a huge income, but also I think it's in some ways it's finding the right kinds of jobs, and we have conversations about what those jobs could be. There's several groups in the city that I think do an okay job with reasonable pay that work well for artists, but whether or not you can raise a family on that or buy a house, it definitely probably isn't the case. But there's I was at a book launch the other day for a friend that works at Shelf Life or used to work at Shelf Life, and they had their first book of poetry come out. And they had worked at Shelf Life for years. And they said that Shelf Life as an employer is really good because they can leave, do residencies, write, and they're pretty supportive of their careers. And so, yeah. So there's a few
nice.
places like that, but you do definitely have to find a second job.
Absolutely. Cool. It looks like we just have one more comment here. It's more of a comment than a question, but this person says, may I add that the Rosa Foundation also gives training for artists or arts administrators. I knew about the training for arts administrators, but I don't know, I'm not aware of the kind of training for artists in terms of um, I guess what you're talking about is taking your art practice and running it as a business. Um, I'm not sure. Um, so does anybody have any comments about that? No? Okay. One more comment here. Maybe mention in the letter to your MP link that was posted earlier, in case anyone didn't see it, I will definitely send this to my MP. Okay.
So I've reposted that link. So it's got a nice letter, a 2-page fact sheet about the benefits of basic income.
Excellent. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, here's one more question. Do you think it would be good for artists to have entrepreneurial training or training in how to become a portfolio careerist, a person who streams income from multiple sources? There's plenty of training for that on the internet, that's for sure. I think that there are plenty of opportunities online to learn that very thing, and I know that even some funders are encouraging people to take these paths. I don't know, any comments on this area? No?
Um, I- I'm going to fess up to a little bit more about my career. I was a dietitian, and if you don't make it in the public sector, you really don't have a job. So back in the 90s, when things weren't so good in the Alberta economy, I became a multi-stream nutrition consultant. So however I could get a contract and make a decent amount of money with that contract. It, Gig economy or gig work, as it were. Yeah. And so, yeah, I chose to do many different things and only had a few ideas of what I would not do. And for the record, one of them was get involved with graphic design and design elements. So, yeah, people have to, many occupations have to do this to make a decent dollar. And yeah, you just have to do it to do well.
Yeah. So I would say to your question, I would say the answer is definitely yes. Do the research, take the webinars, take the classes, and find out ways you can market your work and become a multi-stream business person. It can be done. Okay.
I
Great.
added a short link in the chat for that to answer that. Just with Carfax Alberta, they have several professional development workshops that they offer, often for free. So if you want to join that, there's a link also just about becoming a visual artist that talks a little bit about taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a little bit of entrepreneurship in there. Not a ton of training, but there's definitely opportunities to learn.
Thank you, Justin. That's great. Good to have more resources. Oh, there's one more comment here. Basic income would certainly be helpful. On a positive note, I will say I've lived in Sudbury, Montreal, Toronto, and I have had vast amounts of opportunities in Calgary, more than I've had anywhere else. I moved to Calgary before the pandemic and was able to establish myself as a gigging musician. But also, we can't forget to be grateful for the resources we do have. There are ample opportunities for artists to give back and teach via places like the Jube School, Calgary Public Library, even NMC and Arts Commons. I'm not saying these places are perfect by any means, but I have been able to support myself as an artist contracting and offering my skill set and teaching in these spaces. They have offered me more than minimum wage. I also know what it's like to have a terrible unrelated job, so it's not all bad. Well, thank you for that. It's good to hear about resources and somebody able to benefit from them. So thanks for throwing that in. So it looks like we're just coming up to 9 o'clock right now. So I just want to thank Wendy and Justin for this talk and for all of you being here and for all these insightful and very detailed questions. Thank you so much. And yeah, so once again, thank you and have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Okay. Take care. Thanks so much. It's been a fun evening.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Justin. It was great. Very informative. Have a good night.
Good night.
Absolutely. Thanks for the millions of links, you guys.
Uh,
I've got a billion tabs open on my.
Got a lot of reading to do.
Yeah, yeah,
carryover from pandemic times. This is where I taught my classes.
yeah. No, it's good. It's really good. That's like, what would we do without streaming meetings like this? It's amazing. So
Yeah, it definitely made things accessible there for a while.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Well, have a good evening. Take care.
Hey, you
Take
too.
care, everybody.
Bye.
Nice to see you again. Take care. Okay,
Sorry,
thanks.
I was engaging. This dental work has really knocked me out.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we still have SMB. What's SMB there?
Yeah. I don't
Do
know.
you know? No? Okay. I'll just remove, guess. Yeah.
Okay,
There
there we
you
go. It's just the three of us. Okay, now,
go.
Marianne, thank you, Carolyn, for being here. And I was lucky. Nothing happened to my signal. It was all good. It was solid. And I think it seems to help me to have the phone plugged into the computer and also to
Oh,
have the computer plugged in to the power source. It seems like I need every bit of support to make the signal work properly.
worked well.
Yeah. So anyway, I was glad to know
Well,
that you were there. So thank you. Um,
we didn't have that many in attendance, but
yeah.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to talk it over whether we're gonna, keep doing it.
Keep doing it. Keep doing what? Oh,
Well,
this.
there was some question about whether we wanted to keep
Oh,
the
yeah.
UBI people, so might
I don't.
just
I
want to discuss it with everybody else. Yeah.
right. Yeah. Well, we can do that another
I
time for
mean,
sure.
I'm all for it. I find it really informative, but that's just me, right? We have to
Oh,
think
no, no, no.
about everybody.
I agree. I mean, I'm praying for it all the time. I really am. So anyway, Marianne texted me. She may be asleep right now. Um, she's actually feeling like super rough this evening. And
Yeah.
so she texted me saying that, she set up the recording and it's still recording now.
Oh,
And
stop recording. Can't you stop the recording?
I don't I don't think so. I don't know
Yeah,
how.
you should be able to.
But
What,
she
what
I don't
did you say? Sorry. Finish what you're saying.
I was just going to say that she just said to leave the meeting and
Well,
she
can I click on stop recording here?
do
I
you
don't
see
see why
something
not.
that says that?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I don't.
Can I?
Where
Okay, I'm going to do it. Okay. Stop
okay.
recording.
I don't know what that's going to do.
Well, it's going to stop the recording.
I know, but the thing is, she set it up through a different pathway, so hopefully it'll be okay. Um,
Okay, well, let's just get out of here then. We're not going to stop it. Okay,
um, yeah,
we'll talk later.
she said to contact her if we needed anything. So I'm gonna just ask her if it's okay if we just click the button that says stop recording. just to make sure, because you just never know. Mm. Oops, we're done. Hmm. Are you still there, Carolyn?
Yeah,
Okay. I'm sorry that you're having such a rough time. It seems like you're being attacked from a number of angles and then having to walk those extra 10 blocks with all your stuff. I don't think that helped
I'm
you
really
either.
exhausted right now. I don't feel well. I'm in pain. I just want to get going. So, do you mind if I leave?
No, you go ahead. You go
I
ahead and leave.
mean, do you know how to stop the recording?
Well, Marianne said to just leave the meeting and that should stop it. I think. So hopefully that's correct. But she says she's done this before.
Okay,
So
well, let's leave. Let's just go then. I'll see. I'll talk to you later, okay?
okay, have a good night and we'll talk
Thank
to you soon,
you.
okay? Take
Okay, you
care.
too, Jill. Bye.
Bye-bye for now. Mm. Oh.